Okay. Welcome to this special edition of the Google Hangout organized by Al Jazeera with me, Hasan Patel. The war crimes trial of Liberia's former President Charles Taylor is drawing to a close, and the verdict will be delivered tomorrow. The case, which is being held at a UN-backed court in The Hague, but under the jurisdiction of the Special Court for Sierra Leone, is holding the ex-Liberian leader on trial of 11 charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity over his alleged role in the brutal civil war in neighboring Sierra Leone during his time as a rebel leader and also as president of Liberia. If guilty, Taylor could be behind bars, but what does this mean for Sierra Leone and the African continent as a whole? Is it justice finally being delivered, or is it the case that war crimes and counts against former leaders from Africa is quite easy? Tonight on a Hangout, we'll be discussing these points and more with my colleague from Al Jazeera, Yvonne Ndege, who has been following the case and is reporting from Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown. Good evening, Yvonne.
Hi there, Hasan. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for taking some time out. Hopefully we'll be having a short discussion on some of these points, but also people who are hanging out in the Google Hangout can comment, or also they can tweet us at AJ English, that's AJ English, with their questions, comments, views and opinions for you. But first and foremost, Yvonne, can you just give us a background about this special court for Sierra Leone? What is it?
Well, the UN Special Court for Sierra Leone was established basically to try those alleged to be behind the 11-year-long civil war that took place here between around 1999 and 2002. The court was set up especially here so that they could be closer, or the court could be closer to the victims of the civil war. And it was at this very court, in fact not far away from the hotel where we're staying, that Liberia's former president, Charles Taylor, was initially transferred and held in captivity. He was, of course, later, as we know, transferred to the International Criminal Court in The Hague on the grounds that there was a feeling that his presence, his physical presence in the country where he was alleged to have backed rebels who engaged in killings, in murders and in rapes could, to one extent or another, destabilize Sierra Leone. So it was a special court established for the purpose of trying those involved in the civil war. And after the verdict in the Taylor case comes out and those other people who have been tried under the court will wrap up business and essentially close.
So basically we've got a situation where this court was created to hold to account people who may have committed crimes during the civil war in Sierra Leone. But Taylor is from Liberia. He was president of Liberia. He was also a rebel leader in Liberia. So where was the connection between Liberia and Sierra Leone?
Well, historians have it that as president of Liberia, Charles Taylor effectively wanted to control this region, in particular his own country, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea-Conakry, which is a country that borders Sierra Leone. And in order to do that, he needed to ensure that, one might say, people who he could influence were in positions of power. There are those who say that he saw an opportunity to back rebels who are fighting against the incumbent leadership here in Sierra Leone, and he therefore did that. Now, the allegations go that he provided this particular rebel group, known as the Revolutionary United Front, with weapons, with arms to fight the government in exchange for those all-famous blood diamonds, because the areas and the regions in which much of this fighting was taking place is known and is famous for blood diamonds. So that is what historians and analysts tell us, that Charles Taylor was power hungry. He wanted to assert control and influence over a region that went far beyond the borders of Liberia, and as a consequence decided to deal with, to help, to support, to back, to fund the RUF.
Now, already some former RAF leaders have been tried or being in the process of being tried. Do you have any information about these cases or individuals who have already gone through this procedure for the special court for Sierra Leone?
Well, that's right. Over the last 3 or 4 years, there have been people who have been put on trial, who have been found guilty. But I must say, Hasan, it's felt very widely that these were not significant cases. The feeling amongst the public and victims who were affected by the war was that these were the minions, the small men, if you like, in this conflict. I remember reading about some of these cases, but they barely made the front pages of international newspapers. The capture, the arrest, and the charging of Charles Taylor was really seen as the most significant in attempts to bring justice and truth to the issue of civil war in this country, because many feel and felt that he was essentially responsible for everything that went on.
Now, the verdict may be tomorrow, or it's coming tomorrow. If Charles Taylor is charged for his alleged role in Sierra Leone, what does that mean for Taylor? Does it mean life imprisonment? If so, where will he be imprisoned? Will he be brought back to Sierra Leone? Will it be in the Netherlands, or will it be elsewhere?
Well, unfortunately, Hasan, for the victims, it's not as straightforward as that. According to the International Criminal Court's procedures, the verdict indeed, as you say, will be issued tomorrow. It will be an innocent or guilty verdict. If found guilty, Charles Taylor can appeal against the verdict at the appeals court of the International Criminal Court. Now, if found innocent, the prosecution are also within their legal right to appeal an innocent verdict. So it's at this stage, it's still it's early days, because obviously it's very unclear at this moment what the outcome will be, though many analysts believe it will be a guilty verdict. The belief is that if indeed it is a guilty verdict, Charles Taylor is likely to appeal that, which could mean months, possibly years, being added to this saga. Now, according to the agreement under which he was transferred to the International Criminal Court in the Netherlands, if found guilty, Charles Taylor will be transferred to the United Kingdom. When negotiations were taking place around this case, the British government decided that if Charles Taylor was found guilty, that he could serve his time out in the United Kingdom, which of course has a lot of people upset, because there are victims who feel he should be returned to Sierra Leone or to Liberia to suffer the appalling conditions, if you like, in the prisons back here. And many feel that if he's kept in the UK, well, he'll enjoy a life of luxury in the country's prisons.
For people watching this on Google Hangout, you're with me, Hasan Patel, and from the Sierra Leone capital, Freetown, with Al Jazeera's Yvonne and Ndege, talking about the proposed trial, or should I say the verdict that may come out tomorrow of the ex-Liberian leader Charles Taylor, under the auspices of the Special Court for Sierra Leone, which is being held at the UN-backed court in The Hague. Again, you can tweet us with any comments or questions on AJ English, that's AJ English, or you can send me a message through the Google Hangouts. Now Yvonne, this whole trial, it's been a lengthy process. It's brought out many infamous stories, in particular the one about the British supermodel Naomi Campbell allegedly being given some blood diamonds by Charles Taylor. But for the individual on the streets of Sierra Leone who may have suffered during these terrible times, is this genuinely a mark to end the history, or is it just a political process which will just frankly go on and on and on?
Well, Hasan, I'm really glad you've asked me that question, because I think that really is the key thing here. Walking around the streets of Freetown, you do get the sense, you do get the feeling that people here feel very removed from the process that's going on in the Netherlands. Charles Taylor is far away, he's in Europe, He's not enduring African justice, if you like, or Sierra Leonean or Liberian justice. So people do feel very detached from the process, and they don't see whether he's found guilty or whether he's found innocent as having any real consequence on the day-to-day lives of people in this country. People do feel that, yes, the war did a great deal of harm. It brought about widespread suffering, poverty, and many could link the war to the current social and economic problems that the country is having. But at the same time, when you talk to ordinary people on the streets, they say, well, Yvonne, you know, he's being tried in a white man's court or a white man's country. He's got a television set, maybe a mobile phone, 3 meals a day, access to the internet, which is a lot worse than what I had. We spoke to a victim today whose hands were amputated, brutally amputated by the Revolutionary United Front in 1999, and he told us a horrific story about what happened on that fateful day. And he said since then he's only received 200 United States dollars in compensation. We're talking about more than 10 years ago. So it's almost as if there's a feeling that to an extent the case was kind of hijacked, if you like, by the international community, and then the appearance of celebrities like Naomi Campbell, like Mia Farrow, kind of made people in this region feel so removed from what was going on. So in a sense, whether he's found guilty or innocent, for many people, it doesn't really make a huge difference to their lives. Life goes on as normal, but clearly for people who were directly involved, like the example I gave, having one's limbs amputated, it might give them a sense of closure.
Now, what would happen if Taylor is found innocent? I mean, I presume that that animosity and that anger may become even more widespread.
Well, that's also an interesting question. I think if he is found innocent, like I said, the prosecution do have the right, the legal right to appeal the outcome. So that could also change things. So if he's found innocent after an appeal, well then, according to the law, he is a free man. The question becomes, where does he go? Where will he be welcome? Where would he seek refuge? The feeling is it wouldn't be back home in Liberia. He is an arch enemy of the incumbent president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Clearly he wouldn't be here in Sierra Leone. Some people talk of Israel. He did convert to Judaism whilst in captivity. Some people talk of North Africa as a potential destination for him. But this is all mere speculation. It's obviously very difficult to know what may happen. And frankly speaking, Hasan, all the evidence points to what is likely to happen, which is that he's likely to be found guilty. In fact, I think it's safe for me to say I spoke to his lead counsel, the QC Courtney Griffiths, who's been defending Charles Taylor for the last few years at the International Criminal Court, somebody I've known for a very long time as a journalist, and he said to me, Yvonne, it's a guilty verdict, I can tell you, it's just a question of the details. So I think any speculation about whether he'll be found innocent is probably very unlikely, I would say.
So it's a foregone conclusion, Yvonne, from what your sources tell you and what you think as well. Just moving on from this particular case, you earlier mentioned you've spoken to victims of the Civil War, and victims, it seems, of Taylor's role. The legacies, are they still stark in Sierra Leone of the Civil War, the whole issue of child soldiers, and also blood diamonds themselves, shall I say? Is the legacy still there, and will it take years, regardless of this case, for people to move on?
I think that the legacy is still there. I mean, when you see the amputees around the city of Freetown, it's very real. You can see what the impact of the war was on certain people's lives. Then the lack of development from an infrastructural point of view, from a security point of view, the lack of water, the lack of pipe water, the lack of electricity, high unemployment, poverty, people unable to provide a square meal in one day for themselves. All of this can be linked to the years of underdevelopment that prompted the war, the years of underdevelopment that the war caused, if you like. But then, Hasan, there are those who say, look, the war was 10 years ago, going on to 11 years ago. We've got to stop these excuses as Sierra Leoneans. We have to stop saying it's because of the war that we're in poverty, or that there are no jobs, or that there's corruption, for example, which is also a major issue in the country right now. That those who are in positions of leadership today have to be held accountable for the situation today. People want to move on. I mean, you really get the sense that people are even wondering why we're even here. Something that happened a very long time ago, and like I said, for which many people feel has no real consequence, meaning the verdict has no real consequence to changing their lives tomorrow when the verdict comes out, or the next day, or the day after. So I think what the verdict might do, it will bring some kind of closure to people, and it will also be an opportunity for the people to really say, okay, leaders of today, that is in the past now, the war is in the past now, Charles Taylor is behind bars now, and I think it might lead to the people today holding their leaders more accountable for the situation that's on the ground right now.
So if, when the decision is made tomorrow, and Taylor is found guilty, do you feel that in that part of Africa, in West Africa, or beyond, there may be some alleged war leaders or heads of state who may worry that they may be next?
Well, that's an interesting question, because on the broader issue of the African reaction, if you like, to all of this, I think the first thing I want to say as somebody of African origin myself is that sometimes Africa doesn't speak with one voice. This case has divided the continent to an extent. There are those who feel that leaders like Taylor should be brought home to face African justice, to face judicial systems within their home countries, to taste the wrath, if you like, of justice at home. There are those, I think, who will celebrate this moment as proof that you can't get away with what Charles Taylor is alleged to have done, that no matter where you run, and I'll just remind anybody in this hangout or listening to this dialogue we're having, Charles Taylor has fled from Liberia into Nigeria, where he was given refuge. As soon as he got wind that Interpol were onto him,
Good connection. We've just connection's just gone there with Yvonne, but just to remind those who are on the Google handout, this is a discussion about tomorrow's verdict on Liberia's former President Charles Taylor, who's been tried by the Special Court for Sierra Leone for alleged war crimes in Sierra Leone during the late 90s and the early 2000s. Up until 2003. There are 11 charges that Taylor has been accused for: backing rebels, responsible for widespread atrocities, creating child soldiers, destruction, rape, also the selling of blood diamonds from that region. Now, if guilty, Charles Taylor could go behind bars in the UK, because that was what was stipulated by the UK and the International Criminal Court and Sierra Leone. But what does this mean for Sierra Leone? Is it justice finally being delivered, or is it the case that former African leaders can once again be used as cannon fodder for international law when other leaders from other continents tend to be ignored. On the Google Hangout with me was my colleague Yvonne and Ndege from Al Jazeera, and we were discussing many of these points about the future of the case, what it would mean for Sierra Leone, and also what it would mean for West Africa as a whole. It's caused a much rupture within West Africa. There are 50,000 people who they say were killed in this civil war, with tens and thousands with their bodies being mutilated, and the legacy lives on. Many of the child soldiers are now young men. Many of the victims who lost their mothers and fathers are young people. But even though 13 people were originally indicted, most notably the RUF rebels, Isa Hassan Sise, Maurice Callan, Augustine Jibao, the case was, there are still many more to go. But now we have Yvonne back, I think, and we can hopefully get her back on. Yes, we can. Yvonne, sorry about that slight technical glitch there. We're nearly coming to the end of this discussion, but I just want to take on your point which you spoke about Africa as a whole. Someone tweeted a few weeks ago when the case in Congo, I think it was Lubanga, was convicted for war crimes, that the International Criminal Court should be called the African Criminal Court, because it seems everyone is from Africa who's been indicted. Is that a fair view, or is that just a generalized perspective? Again, it seems I've lost Yvonne. But anyway, this was a Google Hangout by Al Jazeera, the social media team, in conjunction with the web and TV. And hopefully we should do more of these in the future. Thank you for joining me, with me Hasan Patel of Al Jazeera, for this first on Google Hangout. And we hope to do more, many more, in the future. Thank you and good night.